Jaclyn, one of the things that people misunderstand with authentic leadership is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, it's not about pleasing everyone.
Do I need to get out my tissues?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a great point, exactly, because a lot of times people talk about that. It's like it's about trying to make everyone fit and things like that, but that's not what emotional intelligence is.
No, and it is. It's not about making, emotional intelligence is not about making everybody feel warm and fuzzy like we're sitting around the campfire.
Yeah.
It's about actually being able to recognize when people are either aligned with the values of the company, or maybe they're not the right fit,
Yeah.
or where you actually as a leader can look at somebody and realize, you know what, there's something not aligned, or there might be something going on with that person. We need to investigate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, when we're talking emotional intelligence, it is about empathy. It's about understanding and noticing what's going on. And that's part of noticing, okay, these people here that I'm working with, some of these have the same values, and some don't.
Yeah.
And really, when we're talking authentic leadership, it is about knowing, the core is understanding what your values are and understanding that's the core. That's the consistency. Behaviors, people,
Right.
all that sort of stuff can change.
But knowing your values and knowing what is, in alignment with everybody, and the values have to come first and foremost.
Yeah.
And we were sharing, there was, and I won't name the company, but there was a company that during the pandemic that literally
Name
had
the company. I think it's
okay. Well, I heard it was CrowdStrike, and the CEO of the company had a bunch of people wanted to invest in a particular organization, and they as an organization, which I think is really also brilliant as part of a value,
Yeah.
is being able to invest in companies, to be able to put charitable organizations as part of what the company does, so that
Yes.
you're taking some of those rewards that the company is earning and give it back to the community. And one of the companies that or organizations that people wanted to invest in, he did the research. He said, no, I'm not aligned. This is not something that fits with our core values. And he gave everybody a package and said, if you really feel so strongly about this, I'm going to offer you a package to leave. Go find another company that is aligned with your values. And people took the package. And what ended up happening with the company, their revenues grew because the people that were working together were more aligned in their values.
Yeah.
And that's the part that really matters, is that when you're bringing people in, and that, number one, he had the emotional intelligence to say, you know what, we're not all aligned.
Yeah.
And so being able to see that, number one. And number two is like knowing when to say, hey, you know what, Damian, you are a great fit. Your values are amazing. Or saying, hey, Damian, you know what, I think your values might be slightly askew from what we are the values of the company.
Yeah.
You are great. Here's 5 other companies that maybe I think you might be better suited for. Find that for that person.
And that's absolutely the key point here we're talking about, is when you have that, if your values aren't aligned with the company you're working with, you're not going to enjoy being there. It's not going to fit. It's going to be destructive for the company. It's going to be destructive for the other people. And this is where, as a leader, as an authentic leader, you have the emotional intelligence to be listening, to have that empathy, to understand, but also have the courage to say, hey, we need to do things differently. And another great example was Mary Barra. When she came to GM, she said, this is the direction we're going. So she brought all the executives in, said, this is the direction we're going. If you're not aligned with that direction, then exactly, we'll arrange a meeting with HR. We'll find somewhere else for you to be. And that's really, really critical to have a company that moves forward. It is about embracing different opinions, but if your values aren't aligned, that's where we have to separate those two.
Right,
Yeah.
that's a huge difference. Values, it matters, but how, your behavior, the things that you, the core values are so important on that.
Yeah.
Behaviors are different, but the behaviors need to align with the values. And actually, I was just thinking about, one of, key thing about this is if you want to have employees where the culture is rocking, it goes to values.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think back to different companies that I've been involved in. I still think about one of the companies that I joined when I first got my first career position when you're out of college and you're like out of university and you're like, oh my God. And I think about that, I'm thinking, the company was we were doing great things.
Yeah.
But here's something that I never knew. I never really met, you never heard from the CEO.
Yeah.
We never heard the mission, purpose, vision of what he wanted for the company.
Yeah.
And we never talked about the values of what we wanted. And I kept thinking, so much good could have come out if we were all aligned.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening to that company? They fell apart.
And that's the long-term outcome if your values aren't aligned. And this is where strong emotional intelligence is really, really important, to have that empathy, to understand, to recognize what's going on, to know your own values, which as the CEO, it must be aligned with the company's values.
Right.
And if you're the founder, that just generally, naturally happens. Right. But like you mentioned too, if you don't, if you're not aware of it, to make sure that stays there, and that example you put forward before, that of the charity and giving money away, where it wasn't aligned, it was a great way of identifying, hey, the alignment is not here. And as you highlighted, the result was the productivity of the company skyrocketed, which means that the service being provided to the customers improved dramatically, because otherwise your profitability is not going to go up.
Right. You know, and the part about that emotional intelligence too is that when the values are aligned, then you can also be able to look, and this is, again, we go back to culture too. Yeah. You also know that if I'm looking at you, your leaders are aligned with it, then they're going to run their teams similarly, and that's a key part. Because if you're part of a team, and you have to know the people within the team, and you have to be able to say, okay, Damian's vision for himself is this, and Jaclyn's is X, whatever. But how do you, as a leader, how do you manifest that and help them reach what they want? That's being emotionally intelligent to the people that are on your team, again, but it's aligned with the values of the company. Yeah. It becomes a great package for success.
Absolutely. That's where, and as you know from my teaching, I work from the perspective a company should set goals in 3 categories, being economic, operational, and culture. And you mentioned culture just then, which is really important. But how do you set those goals, especially cultural goals, if you don't know what your values are and you don't have the emotional intelligence to actually recognize that some of the people or some of the processes might not be aligned with those values? That's where emotional intelligence is really, really important.
Yeah, and it is. It really matters, those 3 key topics, because they all work together, and without one of them, what happens when you pull a leg out from a 3-legged stool,
it's
right?
Gonna fall over.
It's going to fall over.
It's just got good foundations.
Right. So those 3 make that great foundation, and it starts, when you have that emotional intelligence and you're looking at all 3 key parts of that, economic, operational, and cultural, again, it creates a great alignment.
Absolutely, and that's where emotional intelligence, when we're talking about authentic leadership, compared to being just authentic, is understanding the difference between having those values and then being able to make the decisions, having the strength within you to listen, identify, but then make the decisions necessary to move forward.
Right. It's not just and this is the key, I think one of the key things, it's, emotional intelligence allows you to take your values and be able to act on those values, and lets everybody know if you're out of alignment, you might not be the right fit. But again, it allows you to act in the proper way for the betterment of the company, yourself, and your employees.